Yes, and there we again with a new episode of Dance Gems. Today we are going to talk about simulate, create, and perform. And maybe you think, hey, what is that all about? You have to stay with us and listen to this episode and hear why we is of course me and my buddy Tom, think that simulation is an important item in dance performance. Let's see if Tom is there. Hey Tom, how are you doing?
Hey, yeah, very well, very well. Nice topic again.
Yeah, I think so,
Always
right?
nice
Yeah.
variety in our podcast and have different themes
Yeah,
and
definitely.
ideas.
Yeah, I like it because one of the things what I discovered with Jam and okay, now I probably know all the ins and outs and maybe something extra. Once in a while we had to educate each other with some new terms. And simulate was one of them. Now of course I knew what simulation was and I used it in a more or less similar way, but you were very good in Jam to define things and be very precise around these things. And so simulation was one of them and as a title to come to a good performance and good creation on stage, simulation is an integral and important item to do. Let's get started. I am stoked to talk about this topic that we already did in Dutch, by the way. We always have two podcasts. If you didn't notice, if you're only an English speaker, then maybe it's hard to follow, but you can always do English translation under it. And it's always slightly different. I don't think we told it to our Dutch audience, but we never told that to our English audience, Ton. So if you really cannot get enough of Ton and Jean, we would say listen to the Dutch and the English version. Anyhow, it is all about simulation today. Yeah?
Yeah, very nice, Sean. Yes, I thought simulation that would be, say, in a subjective word, a normal issue to
Mhm.
work with, but I'm quite surprised that it's not sometimes not there
Yeah,
at all.
I think people believe they do it. I think people believe they do simulation until you talk to maybe us now, but in the past, then there are so many more details that you think and suggest to simulate. But I do think that people say, hey, we rehearse our practice and our performance, so we simulate. But you go way further than just repeating your performance in dance steps.
Sean,
Yeah.
why would it be so important to simulate your dance before a performance or a competition?
Let me approach it since I'm the mental coach here. Let me approach it from a mental perspective, right?
Mm.
You would love, of course, to operate with the least surprises as possible. You know, the least. There's always an unknown, which is great. You need to be able to deal with that, but you want to make sure that you have checked all the boxes that you have the least surprises as possible. And so to mimic the evening or the day or the days of your performance as close as possible teaches you a lot about what you need to work on, what can be improved, but it also prepares you mentally for an optimal, and that's a wide term, for an optimal performance.
Hmm. Yeah, it's quite important. Say I said to my dancers when they dance for performance in a theater, um, or for a wedding or for competition, I ask first, how big is the floor? And then suddenly they say, I don't know. For competition floor, I don't know how big it is. In the rules we have this, but and that, but some competitions are different. All theaters are different floor sizes, and all weddings, the floor when you have a wedding, it's also different, and also the underground. And then they look to me if it would be a surprise why I asked this question. And then said to them, please phone the organizer there and ask how big is the floor, where is the audience, and which underground is there. And okay, they said, I must ask this. So when we are practicing now, I do exactly the size from the space how it is then. then we have a
Possible.
real simulation of the space. The underground mostly is in the competition dance wood, but sometimes it's also plastic or another material underground. So we try also to come close to that one. And when you have very slippery shoes, then you can look if you could put rubber under it, that it's not so slippery, and then that you have two variants of shoes, one with the rubber and one with the maybe leather. And all this, when you know this before, you can come close to the reality, what it's really there. And this helps also where the audience is. Of course, you have to know where the audience is if you perform for an audience. And if you get judged, that you know where the judge is standing or sitting. All these questions are really important to be prepared.
Oh yeah,
And if you
sure.
are not prepared with your questions and ask not the, say, subjective right questions, then you can get for a surprise.
Yeah, definitely. When I was a competitor, Tom, without using the word simulation, I hope I can still find it back, but I had a little notebook and I had 10 points on which I said how big the floor was, how the temperature of the room was, what kind of music, how big, how high the ceiling was, even parking spot, so that I'm not surprised that you have to walk with all your stuff 5 minutes. But I had this, and I had this, so I started to do this almost from day one that I started to compete. So the next year, the first year, I was maybe a little surprised because I did what you said, inquire. But the second time that I game, there were almost no surprises. I knew how the dressing rooms were. Nowadays, I would probably use my mobile phone, but I can't do that right now. At that time, we didn't have that. Yeah, that's how long it's ago, guys. Since that we then, but I had that. I had a whole little book, and I knew exactly all these things that you said. Maybe I should add the smell to it, but that I did not had. But I had all
Mm.
these things where typically with a judge, if there was live music, fauna that we used to dance, I had all these things written down, and I used that for preparations for the next year for that same competition.
Yes, it's really important to
Hmm.
plan your, to simulate your planning, but also your performance, your, that you simulate that. For the temperature, I give an example. With my children, we dance in Rimini in Italy.
Hmm.
And I said to the children, it will be very hot
Yeah,
because they don't have
air
air
conditioning.
conditioning. So I don't know if it was Rimini, but it was in
Oh,
Italy.
Rimini. Yeah, that was Rimini.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so I put my air conditioning, and it was already warm home because it was in the summer. I
Yeah.
put on 30 degrees, very hot, and the children were complaining, and my dancers, no, it's too hot, it's too hot. But I said, we must use to the temperature. And so we go to Rimini, and there was air conditioning.
In Italy. No, they changed it from one year to the other. Ah, that's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
funny.
they changed.
That
So
is
I
true.
thought
That is
quite funny.
funny.
And we must train in our room why you did that.
That's why,
Afterwards,
yeah, that's super funny. So we said as best as you can and as much you can know, and then still you will have surprises, but at least you don't have a lot. At least you have one, and this is a super funny one, of course. But yeah, so we already had a podcast. Remember, Tom, is what do you put in your dance bag? Right, when you go for competition or practice, right? Of
yes,
course,
yes, yes.
yeah, it's one of the parts. You have your clothes ready, but for a lot of people, it stays that way. It stays with practicing your routines. And what we're talking about right now is really simulating as if you are in that room, as if you're at that time and in the same amount of space. We even try to simulate a little bit the pressure that you have. That's always a little bit harder to do, but there are methods to do that. How you come, where do you come off on the floor, because that's different on every floor, right? So that's the thing. I looked in your book, Ton, and there are actually I found 5 points. I had to analyze it a little bit. What are the key points on simulation in the GEM method, according to what you wrote? The number one, and I summarized it a little bit, but you can actually even find the pages for it if you want to. Understanding true. You get more understanding of what you do, where you do, and why you do it if you simulate, right? So you actually write that you encourage that to get a better, in English, to get a better grasp of the underlying principles of what's going on during the performance. We already know the routine, all these kind of things are normal during the performance, like when you did Holland Got Talent. So this helps the dancers to explore how the different things in the room, where do you go on and off, how that affects when they, specifically when you're a group, how that's different, a different interaction. And the second thing that I found is that you can, as a choreographer or as a group of dancers, you can experiment a little bit with making small changes. Does that work better if the audience is more there or if the audience around you, which is different for a formation? So you can already see, hey, we have never practiced where the audience is only in front of us and not around us. So I hadn't. So for me, point three is then you get a much better holistic approach, which is what the gem is about, to it. And you can find it also in the gem method. And then the 4 point, of course, is of course through that you can have a really good discussions about feedback and reflection. You know, do you need to be closer to each other, for instance, in that floor than in another floor? And last but not least, I think it's just a part of the development of a dancer. If you want to develop skills in a dancer, then this part of understanding how to use simulation and why it's so important is just part of your education as a dancer. That's not only a responsibility for the coach or the choreographer, it's a responsibility of everyone. So, to develop those same skills, you get different skills by doing simulation. Maybe there are more, Tom, but these were the 5 things when I was going through your or our book, Gem, saying, hey, this is already really well supported with what you wrote in your Gem method.
Yes, from the team, I'm really totally agree with Sean, with you. Team, together, each other, achieve more.
Yeah,
So also in the simulation, it's a team effort.
yeah, yeah,
And if you are not prepared as a team,
yeah,
also even if you dance with two or in a couple or a duet, it's still a team.
yeah,
So you have to prepare both for that, not only in a group.
yeah.
What I want to say with planning, Sean,
Mm-hmm.
if you, because it takes some effort for a person,
It does.
and it's quite challenging to put a lot of time in it to plan it. And if you plan your simulation, it's not only the clothing or your hair and do a dress rehearsal or a general rehearsal. What happened in a theater, mostly you do the whole routine once before to look if there's some issues there in, and then you solve it. It's more than that. Even I would see it like that. First of all, I mentioned it already. How big is the floor? Which underground? Where are the audience? So the external perceiver in gem language. Where are they? Then next is who is the DJ there when it's for competition? All the names, and can I speak with them before for my music, for my show? Then the presentator who present the MC, the competition. If you have something to say about yourself, put it on a letter, send it by email. If they announce you as a dancer there, then they announce it how you want it and not how they do it. Not too long. You ask how much time you have. If they say, as organizer, or we have only a minute or 10 seconds or five, so then your announcement, of course, is shorter. So prepare your text. Very important. Then also, when the final is, when you going from that floor, what they will say, the presenter, about you. So try to have everything by yourself in the hand and also practice that one before. And if you will go in that room, have a person, take a person with you, and then they can speak with the presenter and with the musician man. Because often, or not often, but it can happen that I will get a mistake there. And better tell it twice than only once, or you don't tell it and you trust them that they will do um, what you think. So that's an expectation they cannot fulfill that. So if you want that you get it in your own hands, so prepare it by yourself. And this needs some effort. Where is the lighting? That's also important. Which lighting they can use for your show. There was now a competition a week ago in Rotterdam, and they had a lot of beautiful lights there, beautiful color lights and a spotlight. But the show came and they put the TL, I think it's in English like that, the white light fully there. And because everything, all details make it a whole. So why is that so important, Sean, to do the simulation in all areas with the with the organizer, with the MC, with the DJ? Why is that so important, Sean?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Otherwise, I'm talking all the time, Sean.
it's of course, if you, as much as you can control, doesn't always mean that people will follow you. Like in this competition that you had in Rotterdam, and we're talking in this case as an example as a show. There are a lot of people listening to us that are doing competitions, right? Then you cannot talk to them to the DJ and make sure that your music is correct. But we'll come back on this later. In this case, it's important, first of all, to not get any surprises, but it also optimized the quality of your show. Actually, in the recording, I looked at this show and it was so nice. It was quite intimate, but because of the big room and the white lights, there was a singer in the background and it all fell a little bit flat in a way. So a big part of show is done by the visual aspects, and it's not only the dance that makes the visual aspects. The dance is made by also the light and the placing on the floor, which of course you and the trainer did a lot of work on to put it on the right spot on the floor. But if then the light doesn't support that when they can, if they can't, okay, there's nothing to do. But if they can, it's a missed opportunity. And the same thing is there were two other things going on. I think it was the music that was more or less okay, but the announcement was weird because I think you and the performance agreed that the MC would say something up front, which would build up the context of the show, and then he said it afterwards. That is wow. That's like getting your, I don't know, getting your soup after you get your dessert. That's
Yes,
so all these things. Some people say, yeah, but what does it matter? If it goes wrong, it maybe doesn't matter. But when everything comes together, then you see how important that is. And every detail is always important. Otherwise, we wouldn't put them there. So that's that. And maybe if you and I we didn't talk or don't work together, I might not have seen it. That okay, it was okay, but it could have been literally so much better. And I know you have done things where the light was correct. I remember the show of Charles and Elena where the light was on the bed and it was so perfect and they were in the spotlight of it. I don't know if that was the couple, but I believe that was the couple. It was just because of the light, it was already so intense. And now it was in the middle of a big floor.
yes. And
Yeah.
also, if not all facets are there,
Hmm.
it's exactly what you said, then you will miss some puzzle piece. But you will not feel that. You think, "Hmm." But if the puzzle piece is there,
Oh, yeah.
said it already, then it gives the complete picture.
Yeah.
And it's for the importance or in the interest of organizer, the MC, the audience, for yourself, that everything is worked on. And sometimes it's also a power play from the organization. You do it how we want it,
Yeah.
but it's also a team effort, external factors
Yeah.
and the internal with your team. And if you say it before to them, that they understand the context, why it's so important to simulate it, and why it's important for them, and why it's important for you. And sometimes it's a power game between two identities, where I think, okay, is what is the benefit of it? The benefit is that the quality is there, what you said, Sean, from
Yeah.
total for the organizer and for yourself and
And
for the
for the
audience.
audience, well, I think for the audience, a lot of these competitions and show they sometimes complain that the audience are only people that are connected to the dancers, the mamas, the papas, and the coaches. And no wonder that's the case because we don't do anything extra for the audience so that the audience come, even if they, not personally attached to one of the dancers. And I think that's a point that so simulation, as you explained it, also is not only with the coaches and the team; it's also an effort of the organizers. They can help you in that thing, and that unfortunately we have to see in the bigger things does not always happen, if at all.
Yeah. If you don't want to have stress on the stage or
Yeah,
on the competition floor, arrange it before. And then it's more calm for you, for your team, for your duet, whatever you will perform, and for the organizer. But mostly, what I feel also from experience, that or in the theater, when it's not prepared, they get stressed, and if it's prepared, it gets more calmer. But on a competition, sometimes they have one, the second competition, third, etc., etc., and then they are under time pressure because the timetable is not hold again, so there is 1 hour delayed, and they get even more stressed. And then it happened. No lightning. The musician man doesn't matter. No announcement, etc. But this is not in the benefit for nobody. So it's in the
no,
benefit to
yeah,
put real effort and make also a nice competition plan, not a nice, a good one, where you have the timetable really correct on the second, not on the minute, and also not at the 5 or 10 minutes. No
no.
delay.
There are
Keep
definitely yeah, there are competition. You and I know them that they run
Yeah,
it actually by the minute, and they don't go a minute. And if they go a minute over, they apologize.
yeah. In
Yeah,
England, they say in the ballroom world,
yeah.
they say 7 o'clock
On the
by the
ballroom
ball,
clock. On the ballroom
se-
clock. Yeah.
and they start at 7,
Yep.
and not
Exactly.
7:1 or 7:2. They
No,
start at 7.
you hear
And
them
when
right.
they would start later, they have context why it's a little bit later.
Yeah.
But then it's okay, 1 minute. But this is
Yeah,
why
it's
simulation
a it's the principle. The other thing, and it's literally not a comment on, it's not a critique in the sense of a negative. It's also to just what I see as a coach. I saw my students send me the recordings of their dancing and ask me how they did. And one thing that I noticed, and maybe it's only one song, then it's only one song, but it was a very unclear intro for the dancers. So you could see people struggling in it. Okay, if it's one song, it's one song, but then I heard there were more complaints about the music. And then I think, why? You want to give the students an opportunity to perform their best. There's so many good music out there. And then why not prepare it up front? Also simulate it. Hey, is this a really good song where everyone can do? And then my students also, it was not like a complaint, but it was more like a question why that is. They asked me as a coach, they had several heats but the quality of the music and the rhythm of the music was not the same through the heats. Now they like it, that's different songs, but you can still play it within the same quality of music. And they ask me why that is. I said they want to have variety, try to defend a little bit, but actually you don't have to play the same song, but you can still play in the same sort of context. And not a modern pop song in one heat and then a traditional cha cha in the other one, which gives a whole
Mhm.
different way of dancing.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there is a difference, Sean,
yeah.
between music from the DJ and your own music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you can both simulate before. So when you
Exactly.
know already your own music,
Exactly. Yeah.
you can practice that. But if you not know what the DJ put on, even that you can practice.
Of course, you can still practice. Now I
Practice
know. Yeah.
that also.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. But then if that's also responsible, that's what I said to my couples. This is not the first time that you dance this competition. Last year was exactly the same. You could have be prepared that the music plays, if you go to a competition like Blackpool, you know already ahead what song it is. You can prepare that too. But if you go in a competition where they play different kinds of songs, you can practice on that too. Then practice as many different kind of music as you possibly can to be prepared
Yeah,
for that. So it goes
yeah.
both ways, huh?
Yes, yes.
It goes both ways. It's like
Also
you.
in that one, also in that one, Sean, you have two possibilities. So you have your own music or the music from the DJ. But from the DJ, if you have from the DJ, you can improvise on that music, or you have a fixed program, choreography, and you do on every music exactly the same choreography. It's a choice. Both you can simulate, but the last one, when you choreography is everywhere the same on every music, then for me this, but that's I assume, but for me it's really I think like that. It's the soul gets out of it.
Hmm.
So because it gets more mechanically instead of a human who can
Mm.
feel that not only that beat but also the lyrics, the instruments, piano, the violin, etc. So you can practice that before,
Oh, you should.
and I do this
Yeah.
also with my children. So you can simulate this already before, but both ways can work. But if everybody dance the fixed choreography on different music, then yeah,
No, yeah, that's not the point. But you can. The fact that you can count till four in a 30 bar music doesn't make it a cha. The fact
yeah,
that you can that it's a 20 bar per minute song and a 4/4 beat doesn't make it a rumba.
no,
So I think there's a lot of interpretation and freedom that we try to teach
yeah,
in there, but it still needs to be a rumba.
yes, but not only in ballroom dancing, but also in salsa,
Oh yeah,
Argentinian tango,
of course,
hip
yeah,
hop.
of course,
All it's the same.
of course.
You have music from the DJ, so you can have your program on it. Also in hip hop, it's the same, or in breakdance, and even there it happen. Or you interpretate that music, and you can simulate and practice this
Of course.
already before. And then also you have how you come to a competition floor. Doesn't matter or
Okay.
ballroom dancing.
All right.
How
But
you
that goes, yeah,
that goes fast, but you can simulate that. How you walk to it, how you
of course.
standing on the floor, how you walk on that floor, how you want to start, how it during your dancing, how you end your dance, and how you walk from it, and everything you can practice before and simulate before, and take also. What I do with the music, Sean. Sometimes I take children music for adults music, or I take completely different genre of music, and they will practice on it, and to get used to it, that they get sometimes music they don't like.
No,
And
I'm not saying that, Tom. That's a whole different discussion. I think
Yes,
we
yes,
we, we talked about a pure Latin and ballroom competition. I think people should not execute the same thing at the same point every time. I think we are fully aligned on that thing. I'm just saying that I was even in the big competition in England and in the pre-rounds for the young people. I know they would try to be modern and put a really big beat under the music, but you start to wonder what kind of competition is this? It's great that this kid can interpret it, but if you pretend to be a Latin and ballroom competition, you at least needs to come somewhat close to each other and somewhat close to a walls. Otherwise,
yeah.
what's the
Or
point? If you do free interpretation, like you see that more in hip hop or even in West Coast swing, yeah.
true, you assume that, but there are also many people who has a fixed choreography.
No, I'm saying
This.
no. Okay, but you don't didn't listen to me, Tom. I said you
Mhm.
and I believe that we shouldn't do that. I mean,
Yes, yes, yes,
we see a lot of fixed. We see a lot of fixed. I don't agree with that. Even if the music is the same, even if the music is the same, I would love to see every round a slightly different interpretation of your dance because it's a
yes.
moment later. You're a different spot on the floor. Things have changed, so you should adapt to that. So that I totally agree already. Even if the music the same.
Yeah,
so
doesn't matter
so
which dance
doesn't
form
matter.
you are
That
dancing.
has nothing to do with it. What my you can still simulate that. Yesterday I was practicing with one of my students and there was a slow foxtrot playing, but we were practicing and I said we can still dance on it. We can
Mhm.
still dance. And she thought like, why? How's that possible? I cannot find the 1 2 3. I said, find you other things in the music. And she liked it a lot. Oh my gosh, I see you moving it in a slightly different way, but the choreography still works. I said, yeah, absolutely. It still works. It's different music. And so that in itself is really good. It's really good practice. But in the end of the day, there are specifically in our dance styles, there are music that helps you to bring out the dancer more than other music.
Yes. So to keep it in the simulation, that's also very important, and
Of
it
course.
costs some effort and learning and educational tools are important um, to put effort before for the simulation. But I assume that many people think, on the day of the competition or the performance in a theater, everything will work.
Yeah.
No. I
No.
give the example in a Dutch podcast, like
Mm.
you have a test on school,
Mm-hmm.
and but you didn't do a simulation on school for the test, a pre-test to practice, because you could also simulate that test. And then you think, oh, I learned, everything is in my head, I know it already. They asked me 5 times, and then you get your exam. You are in a different room. You are so in a different place. You have different people in front of you. Then you have different people sitting next to you. The temperature is different. Everything is different. And suddenly your test wasn't that well because you thought it was very well prepared, but it wasn't. So this is why a simulation is always important, and put it on a different environment in your surrounding. Put it in a different space, put it in a different place, in a different time. And then you will feel, normally I'm in the morning, I'm very well, but now I had my test in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So that's different.
Oh, it's absolutely different. And what very often happen with at least the couples that I train is that we work for 2 3 hours, and at the end of the 3 hours they're excellent. But a
Mhm.
competition or a performance is not like that. You have 10 minutes or maybe 20 minutes to warm up, and then immediately you have to show your best. You don't have 3 hours where your coach talks to you every point that you need to do better. So
Mhm.
if you don't simulate that, if you don't simulate one day where you say warm up and you do your round, right, as best as you can, then they always have this feeling, oh, we warm up, we talk about it, this needs to be a little bit better. And then we close the session with, okay, let's do a final round. And then suddenly, wow, this was really good. What coaches often don't see is that they have prepped them for 3 hours to that one point. But in a performance or a competition, you typically don't have the 3 hours to talk them to that point. It's a different way. You warm up and then you do your thing. And therefore, some people say, yeah, I mean, if I only survive the first round, because the second round I'm better. What if you go to one of these big competitions? You often don't get that chance. It's already
Mhm.
done. Other people have done their simulation better and they hammer you, right?
Mm.
So they say, yeah, my first round is always bad. Why don't you make your first round your best round?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, Sean. It's
yeah, totally,
underestimating this
totally.
totally. And but I assume that, of
Of
course,
course,
the
yeah,
human
and it's also
being.
not true for everyone. I'm just talking the way how I see it with when people do that.
But listen to us too. For us, for me and
Yeah,
you, I cannot speak for you, but for us, it's important.
yeah.
It's very important to take this serious.
Oh yeah, no, take definitely.
And also your mental preparation, that you'll be mental ready. And we had a podcast, mental coaching. So
Mm-hmm.
listen to that one. You can get a lot of points what you could use for your simulation. Also, simulate it mentally, your program, how it will be. So not only physically, but also mentally.
Yeah,
Before the competition, listen to that music. What will happen with that music? Okay, I simulated already in my head. And then
yeah,
really music comes, you are
yeah,
focused to it, and then suddenly you prepared
yeah,
instead of, oh yeah, I will do that later. So
yeah.
put that effort in it. That
Effort.
costs
Yeah.
effort.
Definitely. I had an example of a younger coach who was in training with me to be a coach. And he said, I have this idea with my couples. That the longest time a couple has to perform on a competition floor in our competitions, Latin and Boom, is 2 minutes maximum. That's it, right? No one goes over it. Pro Am, it's only a minute and 10 seconds, and the amateurs are often somewhere in between. But he said to make them good stamina, I let them do every dance 4 minutes. And I said, okay, that's maybe a great idea, but I don't think it's the best idea. And he said, no, because now they're used to 4 minutes, so the 2 minutes they can easily do. I said, you only work on their stamina, but you have to think about it like this: a 100-meter sprint runner is not going to practice 200-meter because then he divides his energy different over the distance that he has to walk. He wants to finish as fast as he can the 100 meters, and he doesn't care if he dies after 100 meter because the race is over. So you want to practice the people in the time that they have at the highest possible. And he said, okay, that makes sense. To let them get good stamina is great. But if you let them constantly do 4 minutes, people start to divide their energy in it. So that was when we started to talk about simulation. He said, oh, I got it. So come always as close as possible to what it is. There's one thing before we close that we didn't say in the Dutch podcast, but I'm sure you agreed on. So after everything is over, we also should be give feedback in how did we simulate, like your Rimini in Italy was a good example. Hey, we prepared to be it as hot as possible, but now they have air conditioning, so we need to adjust our simulation. So simulation is also something that you learn over time. And the better you become at simulation, all these components come then together. So it's not a one time thing, it is something that you also can learn how to simulate better.
Yes, and think about the questions before where you never thought about it. So
Yeah,
try to think before what could happen on that day and can I simulate that? It's the same in the emergency when somebody fall on the floor. They practice on this dolls, this plastic dolls, and they the breathing everything. But when the situation comes under stress, then it gets a different story
yeah,
because you can handle all these
yeah,
things you learn there. But when it's really coming there, think already how you can practice this under different situations. And this is what they're doing also, screening people around you. But when I see my course for to do this emergency course to help people, then it's always on under very quiet situations. And but I didn't see them practice in really stress situations.
Yeah, that's true. When I was in my fighting days, my teacher always said we make the simulation, we make it tougher than the real competition. And even
Mm,
then, you cannot simulate the full stress. It's
mm,
still different, but as high as possible, we make the stress in a fighting competition. And you try to come as close. And we sometimes, you and I went earlier this year to that famous, at least famous for us, competition. And you know the music of that competition years ahead. It's not a day ahead, years ahead. You can buy the CDs, you can play it a week, 2 weeks before you go to that competition. You can play it over and over again. We always did that. I did it in my time. But you could still clearly see that there were couples coming on the floor, and it's an assumption. With our eye, we could see that they actually haven't really practiced on that type of music. It's a slightly different music. That's a
no,
missed
champion,
opportunity. That's a
even
missed opportunity.
champions. And with couples, Sean, mean they are not married.
They are
Then
married. they they are
they
dance
are
couples.
yes,
Yeah,
but it's in Sean's system because the whole podcast is speak about couples. But now we can say it's always dancers when Sean speaks about couples, and it's mostly two dancers. And with
or a team. Tom works a lot with team. I am preparing a team now
yeah,
also. It's a different thing, and so this is how it goes in our studio. At least we have at least two official simulation together with the studio. The first one we just more do the layout and spatial things and what dresses we work, and we practice a little bit with the lights. And then we do as a team of the studio, we set everything up as if it's the real evening, and then we ask the performers to come in on that evening around the same time with the clothes on in the right order. We announce them in the way we sit. We actually let the MC also practice that he doesn't say different thing. It could still be spontaneous. And so they come as close as possible to that. And we do that for the performers themselves too, but also because we would like the audience to have a really nice evening or day,
yes,
whatever that is. So it
yes,
works.
and
It
that
works together.
correct, Sean, and they pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a reason too, of course. Yeah.
They give some a lot of money, and some petitions or in the theater you pay €80 or $80 or $100, and then you
Easy.
ask yourself how they didn't why they didn't prepare it, why they didn't simulate it before. And it's about planning, but not only from the organizer side but also from the couple side, and ask the questions to the organizer or to the MC, and ask what is the rule book, what you can do or what you not can do. Then in that framework you can still simulate it, and all the time you have you can prepare it. And this is not what I understand, Sean, why they let it go, why they not put the effort in it before. I make a planning for two dancers, a couple, and made this preparation. 3 weeks later, did you have, because I put notes in my agenda in the
Yeah.
planning
Yeah.
for these dancers, and then I send them a message. Did you ask the organizer this question? Ah, John, I forgot it totally. Sorry. Yes, good that you remind me. I will ask him. So still, they have 4 weeks now.
Yeah.
When I speak them in 2 weeks, because sometimes the organizer they have not immediately time for you or priority for you because they have different things on their head, and sometimes really they don't know it and they have to ask other people. So be prepared and take it serious. You are maybe you are amateur, but handle as a professional. And if you are professional, don't handle like an amateur.
Yeah, that is nicely said.
Yeah,
That is nicely. That
I
is
thought the
that
same, Sean.
that is nicely said. Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, so right that you if you're an amateur, you don't have to behave like an amateur, right? An amateur, in our words, is someone who is not officially licensed to dance as a professional. So we're all in the end we're all performance. It's nothing to do with the level that you're on. It's nothing to do with all these things. Simulation can help. Is a thing that you need to grow in, make it an important thing on your planning. Actually, in the gem book, you find a planner, so that helps already. Ask you questions like, do you know what the size of the floor is? Do you know the venue really well? All these kind of things. You could, if you're a competitive dancer and you go and you go more or less to the same competitions every year, take good notes, right? So maybe you didn't do so well this year if it comes to simulation, but now it should not be surprised where things are, that you know where literally where the restrooms are if you need them. That could be all very important. And we are
Yes.
almost at the end of our podcast today, Tom. Is there anything
Yeah.
to add if it comes
Uh,
to a simulation?
yes.
Hmm?
Yes. In essence of the simulation, it helps to enhance your creativity. It improves your efficiency. It gives you more rest. You get, and when it's rehearsed, it gives you also more safety. So there are many positive things on it, but you have to put effort in it before, and not one day before, maybe weeks before. This is
Yeah.
what I want to say. And it is for all dance forms, but not only for dance forms, it's also in the emergency importance in the, say, our daily schools. For the education, it's also important. So it's everywhere important that simulations. Also for firemen, if they not simulate and practice this before, then in a situation when you will come, then you are not prepared. And this
Yeah.
is mostly what happened with the dancers. They are not prepared. They are prepared in their dance, but maybe they forgot, or there's another reason. I don't know, Sean, what it is, that they not give enough effort for to put
Hmm.
priority in the simulation. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
No, not sorry. One of my coaches, he talks about what we call the strength of the medium, which talks only about the outside things like the room, like the music, like the temperature, how many people do they put on the floor, if it's a ballroom competition or another form of competition. If you're a formation dancer, it's only you on the floor. But the placement, where is the audience? And it's in his belief that a lot of competitions are won or lost because someone really knows these things. Now in Gem we go to every detail and even try to simulate it already at home. So you don't have to wait till you're there. You simulate it at home. And I do believe that could make a difference of your performance. Otherwise we would not make a podcast for it. And I think it makes a huge difference if someone has done all the work that Tom and I talked about it. Yeah.
Yes, it's the same in the soccer, Sean. When they play on the field, they do their penalties. I don't know how you call this in English.
They do their what?
The penalty.
Penalty kicks. Yeah, it's just called a
Yeah,
penalty
penalty
kick. Yeah.
kicks. They practice that, and all five in the goal. But with the audience who is against you, 80,000 people there in the stadium, and all they are against you, and I put a lot of pressure to it, because if you win it, you get world champion. If the last penalty gets in the goal, and suddenly it goes 20-meter over it. So also that you have to practice it. I would put speakers around it. I would pressure on it, and I would maybe put pressure on. Maybe idea put a lot of money of it. If you miss it, you lost $100 or something. But you have to put it in a similar situation. That's
That's
the
close.
importance of it.
As close as
So close as
possible.
possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see it in the military. They do that pretty well. They simulate the war fighting very close to reality. You can hear it with my dad was in special forces. You could hear how close they come. If you make a mistake in practice, it's that you could really die.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how close they get in some practice. But they simulate it well, and they simulate it as close as possible. And then there's still room enough that you have to take when you're a dancer or when you doesn't really matter. You have famous things like a wedding planner who helps you to simulate your wedding. You see
Yeah.
it in all kind of things.
The wedding planner you can
Yeah,
use for your dance
yeah,
also.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
That.
So
Yeah.
good examples, not only in your own dancing, but look around you in other areas where they simulate first and do a trial, do all this type of things first, and then they go for the real thing. And then still
Yeah.
things can go wrong, but then you have actually narrowed that possibility as much as
Yes.
possible.
And also you have to train your simulation.
Of course.
If you train,
Evaluate afterwards.
evaluate it also, and do a video analyze also. There are many ways to improve it, but
Yeah.
to simulate it for your performance, be prepared. Sean said it already several times. Plan it, take effort in it before. Think about questions where you didn't think about before, what could happen, and try to come so close as possible to the reality.
Yeah. I like it. All right, Ton. I think it's a well. I always think that, of course, but it's not so important whether we think it. I hope you thought, and you, is all your listeners and viewers, hope you thought it was useful for you to hear about that. More importantly, is of course the side for yourself. What you do with it. Maybe you do it already. Maybe not. Feel free to send us a message either through Facebook or in another way if you have a reaction to this podcast. Today we talked about simulation, creation, and performance. Don, we will be back with the next episode again, and hopefully with an equal nice topic. Right? With that, I'll already say bye bye.
Goodbye until next time. Thank you
Until
for listening.
Thank you for listening. And of course, as always, we're going to close this off with our music, simulate, create, and perform. And I also will tell you very quickly where you can find us on Spotify, Dance-Jams, Apple, also Dance-Jams, YouTube at Ton Greten /podcast. We have our own website, www.jam.dance/podcast. And last but not least, we have a Facebook group which is called groups/the Dance Jams. And that was it. And with that, we say bye bye.
Goodbye.